where it's a pretty good time to be a horror fan. Yes, we've got to talk about the Backrooms opening, A24's biggest horror opening ever so far, Obsession, Mandalorian and Grogu, Michael edging closer to the $1 billion club, and what's coming out in the coming week. Yes, be sure to stay tuned for that and even more goodies for this week's show. So, the Backrooms opened, and it was no laughing matter. The Backrooms opened to 81.4 million domestically and over 100 million worldwide. I mean, and not just 100 million like it kind of hit it, it flew past it. I believe it was like 110, around there, maybe more, which is truly just incredible. Incredible for this movie, incredible for Kane Parsons, incredible for A24, and for horror in general, which is clearly on a heck of a roll right now, and has been for quite some time now. So of course, Backrooms opening this big is one thing, but Backrooms opening this big alongside 4 or 3 other very popular horror releases, well, Passenger maybe not so much a popular horror release, but certainly still a horror release, and it made a profit. And all of these movies coming out, all in the month of May, mind you, the likes of Hokum, Obsession, of course, which we will be talking about later, don't you worry. This really does seem like horror's just on an unstoppable roll right now, right? Like, how much further can it go? I mean, I was worried that Backrooms wouldn't quite make the century mark, at least worldwide, mainly because it's just quite hard for an R-rated movie to do that these days, let alone something from A24, right? And this movie certainly had marketing from online, and I'd say it was one of A24's bigger marketing that I've seen, but overall, you know, one has to worry when you see A24 next to a title and you're talking about box office. So, yes, this is the biggest opening for A24 ever, and I think that's something that A24 are gonna want to look at closely. Now, A24 certainly haven't had, you know, unsuccessful openings before. They've had quite a few successful openings, but up until now, I believe their most successful one was Alex Garland's Civil War, which was around 20 million. I might be wrong on that, but I believe it was 20 million, around that mark. So this is clearly a massive jump, right? Massive jump from their previous openings. And I think there's several things that went into making Backrooms such a success this weekend. So first, as we talked about, horror's on a roll right now. Horror's really doing business, and particularly with people who don't genuinely go to see horror. I mean, if you look at, for example, Grace Randolph from Beyond the Trailer, she went and saw Obsession and Backrooms this weekend and loved them. And I've seen quite a few people who aren't necessarily into horror express interest in seeing either Obsession or Backrooms, or even both. So I think that's really interesting to see, and I think that does show you that horror in particular is likely becoming a trend and probably isn't going anywhere anytime soon. So that's very exciting. The other reason I think this is A24's biggest movie is kind of because something actually happens in this movie, right? And that's not a diss on A24 movies. You know, they're very director friendly, they're very oftentimes indie films, but it has to be said, something that I've particularly found quite frustrating with A24, particularly as of late, is they have quite a tendency to mismarket their movies to audiences, right? They'll put out these trailers that either have all the good bits of the film in said trailer, or the trailer is actually completely different and they get you in the seat for what you think is going to be a horror film, and they're like, surprise! Enjoy this 2-hour character study. And for those of us who enjoy that kind of thing, we're like, oh, okay, I will enjoy this 2-hour character study. Thank you, A24. But for general audiences, they get sick of it, right? So I think this movie actually delivering for most people. Obviously, we'll talk about some of the criticisms a bit more as we talk about a cinema score. But overall, you know, the general sentiment is that this movie has a decent amount of horror in it. It had good performances. It had okay visual effects, right? They weren't amazing, but for the most part, they were practical sets, and that really helped. Then obviously also Kane Parsons alone, I think, is quite largely also responsible for this opening. You know, he very much took something that was nothing more than indie, well, not indie, sorry, an internet urban legend, and turned it into such a phenomenon with his work on YouTube, and has now actually brought that phenomenon over to Hollywood. And I think that's so exciting. And of course, we'll talk a bit more about YouTube and Hollywood when we talk about Obsession as well later. And that's just really great to see, right? And I think it's a particularly exciting time for horror, not just because it's doing well financially and critically, but I think we're starting to see a lot of new emerging talent in horror, right? And a lot of people realizing that horror might be a really good breaking through point for them and their career in the film industry. So I think that's fascinating. And I think a lot of that is contributing to why horror is having such a moment, and why this movie in particular opens so big, because it really is kind of a horror event. This is something that people have wanted to see adapted onto the big screen for a while in some way, shape or form. And the fact that they brought on the original creator to come and do so, I think only heightened people's excitement for it. And as I said, people generally think it's a pretty good film. I really liked it. My review for Backrooms, I was going to post it on Friday, but I decided I want to do spoilers in my review. I want to discuss spoilers, to discuss why I really like it, lore and stuff like that. And I prefer to wait until after the opening weekend to actually do spoiler reviews, just to try and sort of mitigate the amount of spoilers out there. Although, I have to say, if you haven't seen Backrooms yet, I'll be very interested to know if you took any steps to stay off of social media this weekend, because my Twitter in particular was flooded with spoilers about Backrooms. And it was a very mixed reaction from some people, but for the most part, as I said, most of what I saw was very positive. Of course, for the most part, your X algorithm shows you what you like. So if you click on one thing that's positive or negative about the Backrooms, you'll probably just be flooded with all sorts of tweets and stuff about whatever you clicked on. But for the most part, I do think the movie has resonated with quite a few people, and I'll be very interested to see what its second weekend hold is, because I, for example, went to go book a ticket for tomorrow, which is just a Tuesday, right? And it's at 6 p.m, and don't get me wrong, it's not as busy as it was when I went on opening night. Obviously, that was a huge screening, and I will discuss more about certain audience interactions that happened in my review. But these were actually positive audience reactions, which does not seem to be what many people have been experiencing with Backrooms, which is very unfortunate. But yeah. I actually forgot what I was saying. I mean, this is still, what, episode 3? I've only just figured out how to actually get this to save as a VOD after streaming. So we're getting through it. That's okay. Moving on. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is its cinema score. So speaking of audiences, B-. Now, horror generally, it's a weird case when it comes to cinema score, because even though you could say have a movie that's doing very well critically, that people seem to really like, overall horror does tend to kind of score within the C to B range anyway. I think you have a lot of people with horror who do just go to see it because it's a horror film. And oftentimes if it's not, you know, jump scare central or things like that, they get turned off by that as a general audience member, and they give it a lower score for that. So B- is still pretty damn good for a horror film. For a cinema score for a horror film, particularly Kane Parsons' first horror film, incredible. He should be very proud of this, and Kane Parsons in general, and everyone who worked on this film, the cast, the people who helped build the set, the producers, etc. Everyone should be very proud of the work they've done on this film and the results it has garnered. That is probably the most impressive thing about this. Now, of course, there are some quite... I actually personally find them quite offensive conspiracy theories running around directors and Backrooms and Obsession, and about this idea that YouTubers, and particularly Kane Parsons, because he's, I believe, 20 or 21 years old, he couldn't possibly have directed this film. And that Oscar Perkins and James Wan and all these other people that produced the film essentially directed it for him, which I think is just ridiculous. I think it's so disparaging, and I think it's very dismissive as well of the way many horror, not just horror directors, but directors in general have come up. And that's not to say they've all come up from YouTube, but many of them, many directors come up thanks to the work they've done on their own projects outside of Hollywood. And then people in Hollywood, of course, notice that project and they're like, there might be something there, and stuff blooms. And I think that's a very similar situation that we have here with Kane Parsons and this movie. I think some people feel like he's blown up overnight, right? But that's not the case. And you see the same thing a lot in the music industry as well these days, where smaller artists will often... they have quite a dedicated following, and then they have their big blow-up moment. And because a bunch of other people haven't heard of them, they will accuse them of being industry plants and things like that, right? And it's like, well, they're not. They've just finally had their breakthrough moment. And I think for Kane Parsons, this is his breakthrough moment, which is really, really great. And I reckon with extra work, with sequels, etc., I think this franchise and Kane Parsons in general are going to go very far in Hollywood. I'm very excited to see what they cook up next. I believe Kane Parsons has said he is interested in expanding Backrooms further, maybe doing some sequels. I think he should maybe do a trilogy, and then maybe move on to some other stuff, see what else he can do. Clearly he has a very good knack for world building, so I'd love to see what other sort of twisted worlds he could create, stories and things like that. So Backrooms, very impressive, great. Now, second place. And this one, I have to say, this shocked me that this was number 2 this weekend, and this is Obsession. Now, I'm going to be honest, I did think Mandalorian and Grogu was going to take the win. Not number 1 necessarily, I thought there could be a chance it could get to number 1, but, there was quite a lot of steam for Backrooms going in, so I don't think it was as much of a surprise. But I think Obsession being second and growing in its 3rd weekend now, that's very impressive. And Obsession is, of course, the first movie since E.T. to actually accomplish this feat, which is just so great for Obsession. And as I've said, back with Backrooms, this is a really great moment right now for not just horror, but creators who are hoping to come up in horror, because I think this is showing that there really is space for new creatives to come in and be given a chance. And I think, don't get me wrong, I think they had probably quite a bit of oversight, right, on the producing, particularly if it's your first feature film, which is totally normal, by the way, totally normal. That happens all the time in Hollywood. So there's nothing wrong with having a good producer to point you in the right direction, maybe tell you if you need to add something here, take away something there, etc., right? But these first-time filmmakers coming in having such successful results with such low budgets, I think that's really going to be a key for why Hollywood wants to maybe start coming in this door a bit more and saying, hey, maybe we should start scouting a bit more on YouTube and maybe TikTok and things like that for people to work in the industry. And I think that's a good idea. I'm not saying, I want a bunch of TikTok creators making films for Hollywood or anything like that, but I do think there is a really substantial amount of really talented people on YouTube, on TikTok, on Instagram, who are creating content that should be adapted. I think, for example, one thing that always sticks out to me in a similar vein to something like this is The Sun Vanished, which is an ARG. And that was done so well and has always been so ripe for a movie or TV adaptation. But I don't think it would work as well without the involvement of the original creator, right? Because they came up with that sort of spooky vibe that story went with. And the same here. Like, I don't think anyone else could have maybe done Backrooms this way, the way Kane Parsons did, and delivered the same results Kane Parsons did, and the same with Obsession. I don't think many people could have made a movie like this for less than $1 million, mind you, and delivered these kind of results. And also, I do think a lot of this is also on the performances, particularly, of course, of, I forget the main actress's name, I'm so sorry, but who plays Nikki. Many people, I believe, are going to this movie multiple times to see her performance. And, you know, she's been getting a lot of awards buzz, which I think is really great. I'm very excited. I don't know if she will be fully remembered come award season, just because there is quite a bit of competition in award season this year. And, of course, we are only in May/June, right? So there's still sort of half a year to go. But, Weapons in particular, having Amy Madigan win for Weapons, that's really opened the door to it being a plausible possibility that she could be nominated. And I think if she was nominated, I think there's a chance she could win. I don't think it's strong, because it's probably going to be quite a stacked nominations this year. But, you know, just the fact that it's even a possibility nowadays, when I would say just 5 years ago, horror even being thought of being recognised at the Academy Awards seemed just crazy. And now it seems like almost ridiculous that it wouldn't be, right? Because it's making such big waves in Hollywood. So this is really great. And I mean, Obsession, as you can see, 26.4 domestic, making crazy money worldwide. And I mean, 104 domestic alone total. I mean, that's incredible. Century mark already. Backrooms, I think, is surely going to pass the century mark. If not next weekend, perhaps on its third. But I think for next weekend for sure. Unless it really drops off because of Scary Movie, right? And Masters of the Universe. I can't see Backrooms not hitting the century mark domestically, which is just going to be incredible for both of these movies. I'm so happy for both of these movies, for everyone involved in them. This is absolutely incredible. Okay, number 3. Mandalorian and Grogu. Ooh. So, now, I have to say, I was among the people who were quite surprised at Mandalorian and Grogu's opening. Mainly because I thought the film was only medium, personally. I've really enjoyed the third act and the first act, but I felt like the pacing was just quite slow in the middle. But overall, you know, it was still the lowest opening in Star Wars history, but it wasn't a bad opening, right? 145, like, that's pretty respectable. Not 145, sorry, I think that was... I believe that was a different total, but it made a respectable opening. It could have been a lot worse for Mandalorian and Grogu, right? And it was so good that people were like, oh, maybe Star Wars is back. But, you know, I felt like it might have been a bit front-loaded, and I think that's been proven. And I also think, to Mandalorian and Grogu's credit, it wasn't expecting to have competition from Backrooms and Obsession, right? I mean, maybe they should have expected the competition from Backrooms, and they definitely should have, I think, predicted the competition from Prada 2 and Michael. But I don't think they could have ever predicted, I don't think anyone could have ever predicted just how much air Backrooms and Obsession would take out of the room, right? Because particularly before this, it was kind of like each movie was getting their moment per week. But now, Obsession and Backrooms have kind of formed into this hybrid that's taken over the movie sphere at the moment. And Mandalorian and Grogu's like, I'm still here, please, come and see us. And we're like, no, well, there's only so many premium screens. Build more premium screens and we will see all of your movies multiple times. That's what I would say. I mean, apparently they're working on it, but it's taken a ridiculous amount of time. We're not seeing much improvement in it, or in really cinema etiquette. As we pointed out, talking about Backrooms, people have been complaining about cinema etiquette quite a lot with that film. I think it's particularly rough for something like Backrooms because it's a lot of silence, right? Mandalorian and Grogu, I'm not going to lie, there were, in my screening, I actually went on a week, it was opening weekday, Friday, I went right before 3 o'clock in the hopes that my screening wouldn't be ruined by annoying children, and somehow there was a group of teens in there, but I have to say, they were very well behaved for the beginning of the movie, which was the good part of the movie, in my opinion. But then when it started losing its pacing a bit, you could tell they were getting bored. They started playing up, and I have to say, I couldn't blame them completely. I was like, yeah, I can see why you maybe would be getting bored. I mean, I wasn't bored. I just felt like not much is happening. Could we pick up the pace a bit? And I also just didn't care for the creature feature aspect of it. But that's just a personal taste, right? And I think there's a lot of people who do really like this movie. And I think that's really great. And I think Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau should be very happy about that, at least. Because, you know, Star Wars has had it very difficult. But in large part from their own accord, right? For polluting with so much... Well, I don't want to say trash because not all of it was trash, but so much Disney Plus content and to such varying degrees of quality, it really creates a mixed bag where people nowadays aren't sure whether if they go and see a Star Wars project, if it's actually going to be worth their time or not. But I think they're working to get people back, and I think they'll do it. I just don't think Mandalorian and Grogu was the correct comeback film for Star Wars, right? After this long, as I've said, I think they should have either just done a whole new story, new characters, or maybe done something in the Clone Wars. As much as some people hate going back to the Clone Wars, I think when you look at box office and fan reception and critical reception, the Clone Wars so far, I think, is one of the more liked and beloved eras of Star Wars, so to me it would make sense to make more content in that era, at least until more people are back on board with the franchise, and then maybe make, you know, the film to the show that had a final season that people absolutely hated. But, you know, like I said, some people liked it, I was medium on it, and I think this box office is a direct result of that exact opinion. Some people like it, some people are going back to watch it. I think it's also being carried by families, probably, right? There's not really much for families to see right now, unless, you know, you want to take them to see Michael, or Devil Wears Prada, or I guess Sheep Detectives, and that is doing quite well right now. But, yeah, there's not much family business going on at the multiplex right now. So I think that's probably also powering Mandalorian and Grogu a bit. And, you know, I would just... If I was Disney and Star Wars, I would look at this box office and I would say, okay, so we've not had the best box office, but we've seen that there's still interest in Star Wars, right? People are still willing enough to give it a go, that it can have a decent opening. It's not fallen and plummeted out of the top 10, right? It's still number 3. It's only a... Well, I say only. It's still a 69% drop, but that's not terrible compared to what some blockbusters have had in the past. So, you know, I would just look at this, look at the feedback people have given them. I know there's a lot of toxicity in fan feedback, but at the end of the day, usually there is a genuine point at the heart of it, and I think you need to look through the toxicity and get to the actual point of what people are saying they want, and just give people what they want. Just give the people what they want. I think that's also something Backrooms and Obsession can prove, particularly Backrooms. It gave most people what they wanted, and as a result, people have given them what they wanted, right? So, that's Mandalorian and Grogu. And by the way, in case you're wondering, Mandalorian and Grogu needs to make 415 roughly to break even million worldwide. I don't know if it's gonna get there. I really don't. I hope it will. I mean, it's only in its second weekend, right? It's still got a decent amount of time to go, but I do worry that particularly with the June slate we're about to come up with, it getting forgotten about and not turning a profit. And if it doesn't turn a profit, if it doesn't break even, then I think that is a problem. And I think they will start to look at this a lot more closely and see how they can sort of damage control it, right? Okay, so that was number 3. Number 4, Michael. Okay, Michael, there's not much to say about this film that hasn't already been said, to be honest, right? Like, it's doing great business, congratulations. I think a lot of people suspected it would do this well, but for some reason people were very... Well, not for some reason, we know why, but people were against this movie, they were rooting for it to fail. That has not happened. People have definitely rallied behind this film. It's having impressive holds even now, but I think you can see, for the most part, it's starting to fizzle out a bit now, right? Like, people are starting probably to stop rewatching it, go see new things. People are probably just busier now. It's losing screens, obviously, since, like I said, there's so few premium screens these days, and that is, a premium screen is really the only way a lot of people actually deem it worth the money to go to the cinema these days. So that's probably affecting it a little bit, right? But the big question is, I think, still whether it will hit $1 billion. I still don't think it will hit $1 billion. It's very hard to see that happening just because it's so far out now. It's got so much competition and it's losing so many screens every week. Like, I feel like it would have to play for at least another 3 to 4 weeks for it to really have a good chance of doing that, and I just don't see that happening. I feel like they're gonna start wanting to get ready to start maybe getting the digital push ready. But I would like to see it hit $1 billion, just because that would be a very big win for original biographic, I guess, but still some form of original content, right? And I would also like to see it win because it would be a very different type of movie to hit $1 billion. I mean, Bohemian Rhapsody came close, but I think to have something like this reach $1 billion, I think would be just really impressive and really quite a cool moment for Hollywood. Particularly because, for the most part, Hollywood for a while was really struggling, particularly in the latter end of the 2010s, beginning of the 2020s, of course. They were really struggling to get people back on board with them, and now it seems like the ball is in their court, right? Like, people are back, it's whether or not they can actually keep them engaged. I think that's going to be a big test of whether Hollywood can do that, and I think we'll start to see that next year. I mean, Hollywood sure are hoping for another summer like this next year, but, you never know, because a lot of the movies this year have actually been good. Who knew? If you make a good movie, people will probably go and see it. It's incredible. But yes, so that's Michael, doing very, very well. Not quite sure it'll hit the $1 billion club, but either way, I mean, this is a ridiculously impressive performance. Incredible, and I do believe they've already announced the sequel is going forward. Will the sequel make $1 billion? I think it could. I think people, for the most part, were pleasantly surprised with this film, even a lot of skeptical ones. Obviously, critically is one story, but audience score-wise, audience word of mouth has just been incredible for this film, and has really contributed to its staying power. I reckon the sequel could do it. I reckon it would take time, but I reckon it would naturally open bigger, and because of that bigger opening, if they can maintain that momentum, they'll probably hit $1 billion. They also have to time it right, though. They don't release it at some stupid time where it's never going to stand a chance. It has to be released at the right time. Okay, now, to be honest, number 5, The Breadwinner, there's not much to talk about, right? Like, it's an okay opening. It's nothing embarrassing, but it's also nothing incredible. It's okay. It's sort of what you would expect for a movie like this. And I haven't seen it yet, so I don't really want to comment on the quality of it or anything. So, congratulations to the people who made the film. At least it opened in the top 10, right? And it's a fairly healthy opening for the way movies were going before this summer, right? I mean, we were having movies in the top 10 that weren't even making $1 million. So, well done to them. Number 6, Prada 2. Now, this one there's slightly more to say about, but still not an overly huge amount. But this drop in particular, this far in, still very impressive. It's still clearly making good money. I've seen it twice now. Both times I've seen it, once was opening weekend, the second time was actually last week. Screening was packed. So clearly people are still going to see this. I think a lot of families are going to see this, but not like families, young kids' families. I more mean like people taking their mums and their nans to go see it. That's how I saw it last week. I took quite a few of my family to go and see it, and we had a great time. So yeah, I think it's still got that sort of party atmosphere going on around it. But as you can see here as well, you know, number 6, just like Michael, it's been out for long enough now that it's fizzling out a bit, right? The competition's coming in, it's losing the screens. People are seeing other stuff, but enough people are still seeing it to be giving it healthy numbers. So that's very good for Prada too. They should be very, very happy. Very happy with that indeed. Now, number 7 is Pressure. Now, I'm not going to lie. I didn't know anything about this movie. I didn't even know it came out. I've looked at the cinema here. I don't know if maybe it's not released in the UK yet, but I couldn't find any showings of it. But, I mean, it's made the top 10, so clearly some people watched it, and the word of mouth has been pretty good on it, so I reckon it might have some okay legs. It'll probably come in at what, number 8, number 9 next week, and then it'll probably fall out, go to digital. But hey, that's fine. That's fine. The fact it came out, it made a respectable opening for movies these days. That's something to hold your head high up about. Cheap Detectives, below it. I mean, Cheap Detectives just came out of nowhere, right? I mean, it's still doing pretty damn well. I mean, it's only a 50% drop. But as you can see, I think it's not necessarily a case of people just aren't seeing it because they don't want to. I think, like we've been saying, there's only so many screens you can have, right, in the multiplex, and particularly Disney with Mandalorian and Grogu. Now Backrooms, Obsession, which probably has been given a few more screens than these films because they're still doing such good box office. I think they've just taken up a lot of screens, and there's not really as many places to go and see Sheep Detectives. So I reckon Sheep Detectives will be revving up to go to digital soon. Passenger. Now, I feel very bad for this film. I was considering whether to review it or not. I think I'm going to review it, mainly because I actually somewhat enjoyed the film, and I feel like it needs at least one, at least one positive review for Passenger would be quite nice. So that will be me. I'll be giving it a positive review. I know it's terrible. People hate this film. They hate it. I mean, I've not seen a movie this trashed on my timeline in a while. But I quite enjoyed it, but clearly barely anyone did. I mean, a 70% drop, that's not good. But to Passenger's credit, it already made its money. It made its budget. It'll probably go to digital in a week or two. People will watch it there. It'll make even more money. It's fine. I wouldn't cry for Passenger, right? It's not been received the best, but at the end of the day, the money's what matters. To them. Not to us, but to them. The money's what matters, and it made some money. I would say, one thing, even if you don't like Passenger, I think you should be excited about with Passenger, is it continued the current trend of all the major horror releases consecutively for May, all turned a profit in their opening weekends, and that is so impressive. And again, that's why I say horror is on such a roll right now, to not only have a good opening weekend, but to actually turn a profit 4 times in a row with 4 different movies. That's incredible, and that I think is also why people are keeping a very strong eye on horror going forward. But maybe just not on Passenger. I mean, like I said, I liked it, but it's not had good word of mouth. It's not, there's the poster for it there. I liked it. People didn't. If this poster intrigues you, I'm going to try and convince you to go and see it if you haven't, just because I liked it. I'm not going to tell you you're going to like it, but I will say if you're a fan of those sort of Insidious style movies with the jump scares and those sort of entities, you'll probably enjoy it. So then we've got Mortal Kombat 2. And again, I feel bad for Mortal Kombat 2. I will be honest, I actually haven't seen it yet either. But I'm not a very big Mortal Kombat fan. I found the first movie okay. And I'll probably check this one out on streaming. It just, I didn't feel like it had any momentum going into it anyway. I saw like next to no marketing for it here in the UK. I barely even knew it was coming out. A lot of people barely knew it was coming out, or even out when it was released, and I was telling people. So I think this is just kind of sad. I think Mortal Kombat 2 will probably be heading to digital quite soon. I think they confirmed the digital date. I'm not sure. thankfully they pushed Obsession back. We're going to talk about that a bit more just coming up in the coming this week category, but you know, the general rule of thumb these days when it comes to theatrical windows is if your movie's doing well, we'll keep it in theatres for a bit. If it's starting to slip, we're probably going to start thinking about doing your streaming. You don't have to like it, but that's what Hollywood does these days. So, that's the top 10 box office. Now we move on to what's coming out this week. Now, compared to particularly, I feel like the last few weekends, it's not as big of a weekend as I think the last few have felt. There's not as many big new releases. I think also Euphoria's ended now, right? The Boys has ended. There's not really a big show going on right now for people to watch. So in general, I feel like there's just not as much this week, but there's some stuff to look forward to. Now, obviously, Scary Movie's coming out this week. I'm very excited for this movie. I'm a big fan of Scary Movie. I actually even enjoy the sequels. I think my least favourite is 5. I don't like 5. There's a few funny moments in it, and I think I like it more nowadays because it's sort of gone on to be sort of iconic for the memes it's created, right? But Scary Movie 1 to 2 I think are undeniably the best ones. Scary Movie 3 is actually my favourite one because it parodies Signs, and I love Signs so much. But absolutely, I think people are very excited for the Wayans brothers' return. It's tracking at the moment for 35 to 55 million. That's a pretty good tracking for a movie like this. I mean, it's not a small budget. This movie was given about a 50 million budget, so of course when you double that for marketing, you get 100 million for its break-even point. So that would make me a little nervous, just that domestic opening. But obviously worldwide, it could very much make much more than that. It could surpass the century mark in one weekend. I think the big question is whether or not Scary Movie can capitalise off of the momentum of horror right now. Because that's something it very much did when it originally came out. Is it very much capitalised off of the momentum and success of the movies it was parodying. But this one is very different because it's been such a long time since the last Scary Movie that they've got, I believe, over a decade worth, maybe more, of horror to parody at their whim. So, you know, to one degree, they might be parodying stuff that feels a little outdated, whereas, you know, their marketing, which they're able to update more, is parodying movies coming out right now. But I think they've been doing an excellent job on the marketing so far. I think the trailers have been hitting. Whenever I see a horror film lately for the last month or so, they've been playing the Scary Movie trailer in front of that, and it always gets laughs, which is a good sign. And, you know, you start to recognise people when you go to cinemas multiple times and you see them multiple times, right? So you know these people have probably seen this trailer once or twice before, and they're still laughing at it, and you still see them going, yeah, I want to see that. So that looks good for this movie. I think it's going to be quite popular. I don't know if it will be critically popular. I don't know. The first something about Scary Movie and parody movies in general that people will need to understand is they've never really been liked critically. There's been exceptions to that rule, but for the most part, they've never exactly been critical sensations, but they usually just work very well for not only general audiences, but people who don't take themselves so seriously, right? I mean, I've always said for quite a long time now that I think one of the biggest problems with film criticism today, and one of the reasons so many people don't listen to film critics, is because, for lack of a better term, they're so up their own arse, right? Everything has to be tailor-made for them, and if it's not tailor-made for them, it's terrible and it's the worst thing they've ever seen, right? There's such a lack of medium ground these days in film criticism. That's what I'm hopefully trying to bring back a bit more with my channel, as well as talking about, you know, the business side and stuff, which I love so much. Also, I like to bring back a bit more of the nuance. The nuance in film criticism, and, you know, just because something might not be to my taste, that doesn't mean it's a bad film. And I think people should be prepared for that reaction to Scary Movie, from critics in particular. I don't think critics will review it well. I think they'll probably call it childish and lame, whatever. I don't think anyone's going to listen to the critic score. I think it's going to be very dependent on the audience score. The audience score, word of mouth from audiences, is going to propel this movie or kill it. Do I think it will be a success? I have to say, I hope it will. I really hope it will. I really do love this franchise, and I would love to see just parody movies and comedy movies, really, in general, just make a comeback. But it's difficult to predict. One thing I do also think it has going in its favour, parody movies also, like Scary Movie, became quite popular during times of financial strain for people, right? And because it's a good release, it's a good escapism opportunity. And so I can see maybe a lot of people wanting to go see something like Scary Movie for that reason, just to have a bit of a laugh and see something not serious. And maybe critics will understand that too. I think critics, some of them I hope will go into this with the right mindset of this is not something to be taken seriously. This is a movie we go into and we laugh. And that's about it. But that's Scary Movie, that's what it's tracking for. I reckon it will come in at around 45 million if the word of mouth is okay. And I reckon globally it will probably debut around 80 to 90 million. If the word of mouth is okay. I think if the word of mouth is really, really bad, which it very much could be, let's be clear, you know, maybe it will be less than that. But I can't imagine the word of mouth being that bad, to be honest with you. I think there's a lot of people who are very excited for this film, and I do have faith in the Wayans brothers to make something good. They've made many good projects before, many hilarious projects before, so I have full faith that they are going to do that same thing again. And there's so much content for them to parody now, right? Like, so much. And I think they probably have quite a bit to say about horror as well. And I think, for example, Scream 7, one of my biggest problems with Scream 7 and why I didn't like Scream 7 was because it felt like it had nothing to say, right? It lost the core of Scream, which was, it was always not only making fun of horror, but it actually had something to say about the horror and the state of horror at each point they released a Scream movie. Whereas Scream 7 didn't really have anything to say on the state of horror. It talked about AI, and it talked about, you know, a few things about originality, but that was sort of it, and it was very just flat. So, you know, I have strong hopes for Scary Movie. I think it could go well. It really could go well, and I really hope it does. Also coming out next week, Masters of the Universe. Now, Masters of the Universe is surprisingly tracking at number 2. So, Scary Movie is tracking to beat it. Masters of the Universe is coming in at 25 to 35 million for tracking. This would be okay if it wasn't for one thing. Amazon spent a ridiculous amount of money on this movie. Would you like to know how much the budget for this movie is for them to break even? It's not 200, it's not 250, it's not 300 million, 400 plus million dollars on a Masters of the Universe movie. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I think this could have been an okay budgeted movie if it was like maybe 200, right? Although, no, sorry, 200 total, right? So 100 for the actual movie, 100 for marketing. This is a ridiculous budget, and just to be frank, there's no way they're making this money. If they make this budget back, I will be insanely shocked. I think it would have to have like Project Hail Mary level word of mouth and fan support for something like that to happen for this movie. I mean, I see no momentum behind it, to be honest with you. I mean, they're doing those collector's popcorn buckets for it at my local cinema. Usually those things sell out the weekend. There's still lots of them lying around, so I think that alone shows you people aren't quite gearing up to go and see this movie. I'll be seeing it, of course, because I'm going to be reviewing it. I'll also be seeing Scary Movie on opening weekend, and I'll hopefully be putting that review up on Saturday. It won't be a spoiler one though, I don't think, unless there's like such funny stuff in that I want to talk about. In which case, if it does end up being a spoiler, obviously that will come out on Monday. Masters of the Universe, I don't think I'm going to need to do a spoiler review. I'm not gonna lie, I don't know much about this property or IP, but I'm excited to maybe get into a new IP. I'm just also, there's a bit that sort of stops that excitement when you know this movie's probably gonna tank, like financially, no matter how good it might be, and may not get a sequel, right? Or it may just be sent to the streaming void, and we'll get streaming sequels. But it's coming out. We don't know how it might go. I'm looking forward to potentially getting into a new franchise, and hopefully you guys will join other people in going to go and see it as well. There's room for everybody when they're good movies. But that has been proven this year so far. I think that's really been proven, and the last few years. When you make a movie actually worth people's time and money, they will go and see that movie. You just have to make it worth it. Also coming out next week on Netflix is Jennifer Lopez's Office Space. Yes, Office Space. And this one is apparently like a rom-com sort of thing. I don't really have any interest in that, but I'm sure it might actually do quite well on Netflix. That type of content does generally have quite a big audience, particularly on streaming. So I reckon that could be quite good for them. We also have Hokum on Tuesday, so tomorrow. That's coming out on digital. I will be checking it out on digital. I was so annoyed. I just missed out on being able to see it in my cinema because the day it was showing, the only day it was showing in the theatre was the day I needed to go see Backrooms. So I couldn't see it and it was so frustrating, but it's okay. It's okay. I'm going to check it out on digital and I'm very excited. I've heard very good things about it. So that's coming out on digital, and also on Friday, this is one I want everyone to take notice of, particularly if you're a horror fan like me. A new show on Apple TV called Cape Fear debuts. I'm quite excited for this show. It stars Amy Adams and Javier Bardem, and Apple TV in general, they make some pretty good content. I've not watched a lot of Apple TV content, to be honest with you, but I've checked out the biggest ones, right? Like Ted Lasso, Pluribus, Severance. I love Severance. Pluribus I really liked, but Severance, that's in my opinion one of the best shows I've ever seen. I'm so thrilled for the next season of that show. I've watched some of For All Mankind, pretty good, but I've just never sat down and properly watched the whole show. So, you know, I'll definitely be checking this out. Word of mouth on it so far is pretty decent. And I think I'm definitely in the mood for another horror show to watch, right? It Welcome to Derry was so good, and then Stranger Things Season 5 was so bad, that I've just been waiting and scratching for a new horror show to watch weekly. I love a weekly show. The thing, I believe I hope it's weekly. I actually didn't check that. I'll have to check that. I hope it's a weekly show. I did watch The Burrows on Netflix. That debuted, I think, last week or the week before. Pretty good show. I really liked it. Really good chemistry from the cast. And I thought, as someone who has experience with their own family and Alzheimer's and stuff and dementia, I thought it was a very clever and interesting way to mix horror with that sort of allegory. Really good show. I'd really recommend it. So if you're in the market for some horror TV, I would say go watch The Burrows. It does fall apart in the ending a little bit, but for the most part, pretty good show, has some good vibes. I would say it's not just Stranger Things in a care home. Some people have been saying that. I don't think it's quite like that. You can certainly see the Stranger Things inspirations and influences, but overall, I would say there's enough different there that it's its own show, and despite the ending, highly recommend that. And of course, I'm excited to check out Cape Fear. I might cover it weekly. I might cover it, I don't know. It depends how much interest is in it, and to be honest, how much it interests me. Just because, you know, summer movie season, there's a lot to do, there's a lot to watch. Like I said, I'm rewatching Backrooms tomorrow. We've got Scary Movie and Masters of the Universe this weekend, and then I've got to get those reviews up, as well as we'll be doing this again, of course, next Monday, as usual. So there's a lot of sort of other stuff coming up, so I don't quite know if I'll have the time to cover Cape Fear, but I'm very much looking forward to it. So, that was this week's LCM show. What did you think of the top 10 this week? What did you go and watch? Did you go see Backrooms and Obsession this weekend? And if so, what one was your favourite? And what are you looking forward to watching this week? Let me know down below. Be sure to like and subscribe for more updates, more film reviews. We have multiple different shows on this channel. And I have a gaming channel now. It's not quite started up just yet, but I'm getting some good news stories ready for our first live stream. That will probably be on Friday on LCM Replay, so be sure to go and check that channel out. And of course, stay tuned for my Backrooms review, which I am filming right after this. Hence the shirt. I tried to pick a Backrooms style shirt. It was the closest I could come up with, but I think I did an okay job. So be sure to stay tuned for my Backrooms spoiler review, my scary movie review, and my Masters of the Universe review. That's all for this week. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.